Welcome to another fantasy game plan. It's week 10, baby. And I'm sitting here with Joey D, the Pernsky, and the director, of course. And it started off, the Redskins, we get a win. I was there, and we get a win.
He got honored. He got to walk around the stadium as a former player.
Yeah, and I got to see my fantasy players play the game. RG3, of course, he didn't get any touchdowns, but Alfred Morris, he went off, but I didn't win nevertheless.
Anybody have Young in their lineup? Hopefully not. If you did, shame on you.
Yeah.
Big game tonight, so hopefully we can get 2 Redskins wins in a period of 4 days, because Thursday Night Football, hopefully this will get posted in time for that game. I feel good about the Redskins in Minnesota. You know, last year, if you remember, RG3 ran for 2, including that long run, had a huge fantasy day. I don't think he'll run quite as much tonight, but I think the Redskins get a win tonight. How about you?
I think it's one of those trap games, everybody out there in fantasy land.
Of course you do.
Alfred Morris should have a nice game, so should Peterson. Thursday night games are terrible, by the way, from a fantasy perspective. But I'm picking the upset with Minnesota. At Minnesota.
Big night for AP?
Big night for AP.
Well, I'm going Redskins. I think RG3, if you're thinking about whether or not you should sit him or start him, I'm starting him.
Our director is dancing because he's an AP owner and he's excited about the news as though he's authority. But I do agree AP has a big night.
During last week's biggest blowout of the week when I blew out Ronaldo's team, he started RG3 and I started some guy I picked up off waivers named Josh McCown. I'm just saying. Who do you want to listen to?
Yeah, I got you. Speaking of starting them and sitting them, you know, we got Hakeem Nicks. Everybody's been talking about the Giant guy. Why don't you give us a little insight? What do you think?
When you think of touchdowns, you think of
Hakeem.
Giants are going to pulverize Oakland. Look for Hakeem to have a good day. Look for Brandon Myers. Those of you who have Jordan Cameron off, Gronkowski off. Brandon Myers is not a bad sleeper to fill in your lineup because he's going to score this week too.
So if I got Hakeem Nicks, Denarius Moore, and Rashad Jennings, who do I start?
You start Rashad Jennings. I mean,
You do.
Rashad Jennings is a starting. You got an RB1 playing for a team that loves to run the football. That's a no-brainer. He's actually looked pretty good. I would start Rashad in that.
Over Hakeem?
Although I start Hakeem. Although Giants run D's been pretty tough the last couple of weeks. Just saying.
I think you start Rashad Jennings.
I would start. I always start your running back 1. Absolutely, he's going to get the most touches at all.
And we also talked about, you know, last week was the week of the backup quarterback. You know, Coach Gibbs talked about it earlier today. The most important thing was having a valuable backup. And
Right in this office.
And you also said it happens for fantasy, too.
It happens in fantasy. You know, and you're in the stage of the season where you got to be prepared. Matt Kenseth, member of our league, he's the 3 seed. Had Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers only on his roster. He went down. Of course, a lot of us tried to pick up some players to block him, but there were a lot of guys available. He just picked up Nick Foles. He'll be throwing him in his lineup. Going to be a little bit of a downgrade. Does Nick Foles repeat what he did last week ever again?
No, not ever again,
Yeah.
but I'm not even sold on that he's going to have a pretty good game. You know?
I disagree. I think he had a concussion earlier than they thought, and they didn't pull him out quick enough. That's why he had a bad game a few weeks ago. I think he's for real. You're going to see.
I think you have a concussion. I think he's got a really easy schedule, but I'm not sure Nick Foles is the guy that's going to take you to the fantasy promised land. So couldn't happen to a nicer guy with Matt. I only say that because he's competing against me and he's in my division. So hopefully Nick Foles is a one-hit wonder.
To Pern's point and Ronaldo's point, those backup QBs, I had Kurt Warner the year he went. We didn't know if he was going to start or not. It was 3 years ago. Kurt Warner took me to the fantasy championship. A blizzard in New England. I couldn't start him. I started Ben Roethlisberger. I picked him up off waivers. I won the championship.
Here's the time of year, though, where you start thinking about getting value for your bench. The bench is very important probably for this week and maybe next week, getting you through the bye weeks. But here's what I'm doing, starting to get to week 11, week 12, seeing who you can package together and get value for so that when those playoffs start, you don't need value on your bench. You don't need backups. You don't need insurance. You need points, and you need to parlay those backups into points. So start looking now. If you've got some key backup positions, what can I package together to get value and get points for the playoff run?
Big pickup for me last week was Chris Ivory. So you need to take a look. He helped me win last week's game.
Someone gave you some sound advice about Chris Ivory too, if I recall.
Me, Joey D. Let's talk about trades. So you know, trades are very
Trades
subjective.
or fleecing?
Well,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
Big trade in my Washington league. Want to get some viewer thoughts. Want to get your thoughts on it. In my opinion, here's a great trade. A great trade is a trade that helps both teams.
Yep.
And you cannot judge a trade based on 1, 2, even 3 weeks. You got to look at it over the course of the year. So I made a trade. I've had Andrew Luck and RG3 as my quarterbacks. I hate picking between the two. I wanted to upgrade a little bit, so I targeted. I made a trade where I gave Luck and T.Y. Hilton, and let's just say The team that got him got a great week to get Luck and T.Y. Hilton, big week. And I traded Matt Forte, got Tony Romo, Noshawn Marino, and A.J. Green. I upgraded my quarterback and my receiver, downgraded Forte. Great trade for both of us. You didn't really like it. I liked the trade, although I broke my rule, and that's this. When you make a trade, the best player in every trade I like to be getting. And in that case, the best player of those 6 was Forte, and I gave him. But I felt like I was upgrading in a lot of areas.
Well, let's not forget about A.J. Green. That's a great pickup.
And I just don't like trading Matt Forte in a PPR league. He's a top 4 running back. But you look at A.J. Green, head and shoulders better than T.Y. Hilton. And Romo versus Luck versus RG3, I think you're right there with his end of the year schedule.
Easy schedule at the end of the year.
I think you're right.
And it hurt me to watch Forte play, but I like Noshawn Marino, the guy scoring every week.
History repeats itself. Noshawn can't stay healthy. He will get hurt second half of the year. But you've got Monty Ball. You've already made those.
And Zach Stacy trots off the bench to go with that. So anyway, any thoughts on that? Tweet me and tell me I'm a moron. Let's take a look at some of the games this week.
Yeah, what do you got for us, Director?
Well, let's go over last week's pick.
He will.
Ronaldo was 5 out of 6.
Oh!
Say what you want about not getting blown out by this guy. I pick him, baby.
I think he's 10-1 over the last 2 weeks. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we'll be talking a lot about your picks during the end of the season when we're holding the championship trophy.
Other 2 guys were 3 and 3.
That's just a number.
Let's start off with Detroit at Chicago.
Chicago. I got to go with Chicago, man. I think McCown, I don't know if Jay's going to play, whether he does
Cutler's
or not.
playing, they just said it.
Okay, well, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Chicago.
This game's a fantasy feast. I'm actually going with Detroit with the upset. They had a bye week. They've been prepping for this game. I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Reggie Bush. Good grief, Calvin Johnson can't do any more than he's already doing. Stafford. This is a big fantasy day for all the teams, but I actually like Detroit in this one.
I agree with Detroit. I think it's a mistake rushing Cutler back. McCown could do just fine. He did great last week. I agree on fantasy implications. Calvin have a huge day. Bush. Look for Joyke Bell to get a touchdown too.
What do you think about the receivers? Marshall, Jeffrey, Forte.
Start them all.
I was impressed with all of the receivers, the way they spread. I was impressed with the way McCown spread the ball around. Even
Absolutely.
Martellus Bennett got tackled at the 1-inch line.
That
Almost
should've been
everybody got in on the action.
That cost me a victory.
I like all skill players in this game, every one of them, with the exception. I think when you go past Calvin Johnson, I think Durham's a little bit of a risk. But if you need a plug and play, even he might give you some help for one
Sure,
week.
for sure.
Another big fantasy game would be Philadelphia at Green Bay.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about the Green Bay side. You got to downgrade you got to downgrade Jordy Nelson. You got to downgrade. Only one that doesn't get a downgrade is Eddie Lacy. Eddie Lacy's going to be a beast. But Seneca Wallace throwing the ball, Pern,
Didn't look too good.
didn't look too good.
I hate to pick an NFC East team, but they're kind of rolling. I like Philly. Hey, let me ask you a fantasy question. I've got Mason Crosby. We don't talk about kickers much. Do you think there's much effect, or do you think this actually helps? Will they even get the ball in the red zone to kick field goals? Is the question.
With Eddie Lacy, yes. I think Eddie Lacy and Starks, they run the ball 40-something
So you
times.
keep Crosby in your lineup?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Philly, I think, wins that one, though.
Nick Foles throws 10 touchdowns.
I don't believe that, but
Oh, but
Philly wins.
That's the concussion part.
Who do you think is going to win that game, by the way, Brian?
Philadelphia for sure.
All right, we got 3 Phillies. Wow. How quickly they fall. One guy, Aaron Rodgers. Wow.
Cincinnati at Baltimore.
Boy, that's a black and blue game. I'm gonna go with the Bengals in this one. Again, the
like
Bengals
that.
have impressed me, and of course, as a new AJ Green owner, I'm going to be cheering hard for Dalton to be chucking the pill. But no, I like Cincinnati in this game.
I like Cincinnati too. Look for Ray Rice to have a rebound second half of the
Ooh,
year.
really?
Gio Bernard had video game highlight reel touchdown last Thursday night. I like all your fantasy players as well.
What happened to our big money quarterback Flacco and all of his receivers? Can we trust any of them down the stretch?
His whole team with Anquan Bolden went out to San Francisco at the beginning of the year. That's hurt. They haven't replaced him yet. That Marlon Brown's good. He's just not Anquan Bolden.
Yeah, I think Ray Rice has a big game. They lose Geno Atkins on the defensive side for Cincinnati. So, I look for him to go between the tackles, but I still think that the Cincinnati wins.
Dennis Pitta should be back soon as well, so that'll help out Flacco on Baltimore's offense.
How about the hot Carolina Panthers traveling out to San Fran?
I think this is game of the week. I mean,
ball game.
You're talking it's put up or shut up for Carolina. They're going all the way out. I think they can play with them. I really do.
Vegas says it's a low-scoring game, so it may not be the fantasy feast of some of the other games. You got to start Cam Newton. I think San Francisco wins this game. for some reason, I'm feeling Frank Gore this week is going to have a big game, and I'm playing against Frank Gore in a league, and I'm not excited about it. I think Frank Gore has to be in your lineup. I think average week for the quarterbacks, probably a little bit better for Cam than Kaepernick, but I like San Fran to win this game.
I think Carolina. I think Carolina. They go all the way down there, and if they come back with a win, it's huge for the team. So I think they got a good momentum roll. I think they get the win.
I'm going to go with Pern. I'm taking San Fran. Bolden. You got Manningham should be back soon. I don't know if he's back this weekend.
And now they got
Gore.
Crabtree trotting around practice.
Trotting around practice. I just think they have a little too much for Carolina. Close game though, but I'm going with San Fran.
All right, how about Denver at San Diego?
Here's your fantasy explosion of the week in terms of points, and those may all come from Denver. San Diego, I think, has impressed a lot of people this year. This is going to be Denver for the win. Obviously, there's no scenario where you bench any of your Denver Broncos, but I think you're going to have a big week. Obviously, I'm not just saying this because I just acquired Noshan Marino. I think as the season goes on, Peyton Manning's arm may get a little more tired. I think they run the ball a little bit more. I think Noshan, and you may even see a Monty Ball or someone else get in there and vulture a couple. But I think it's a big week.
I almost had the upset last week with Houston. I'm pulling the upset. They lost.
Only in horseshoes.
With,
That's all that happens.
But I'm going with San Diego.
Whoa.
At home, San Diego is a different team. Rivers, Keenan Allen. You've got Gates. You've got Danny Woodhead. It's a huge fantasy game. I think San Diego's going to have a good game.
Agree, it's a huge fantasy game, but one thing you're missing, Peyton Manning's had 2 weeks to prepare. Their coach is sick. They're all playing for the coach, Fox. I think this could be a Denver blowout.
I agree. AFC West division rivalry. I got to go with Denver, even though the fantasy points will be big.
How about Dallas at New Orleans?
That's another good game.
That's a
I think
good
great
game.
matchup playing in New Orleans. My former team. And I think at the end of the day, I think they get this win against Dallas. They've always played well against Dallas in any game. And, the last 3 or 4 games, New Orleans has come out with the win. So,
Well, I agree. I'm assuming anyone with Jimmy Graham at this point, he would have to be maimed to not put him in your lineup. I made the mistake the week he came back and scored 2 by benching him. Had a huge week last week. Obviously, big fantasy game. I think the Saints win. Is there anyone in particular that stands out in this game besides, the obvious Jimmy Graham?
Besides Jimmy Graham, I like Pierre Thomas with Sproles, maybe banged up a little bit. Obviously Breeze. I think it's going to be a closer game than we think. But New Orleans defense is so much better than it's been in the past. I don't see who's running the ball in Dallas.
Is there a DeMarco Murray sighting this week?
Is it Randall? Is it Dunbar? Who is it going to be? Beasley's a good possession guy now, and there's always Witten. But I think it's going to be a fun game to watch on Sunday night.
all right, well, that'll do it for another Week 10 edition. Don't forget, find out which teams are on buys. You may need to go ahead and put in a player here or there, and we'll see you next week.
Go Skins.
Giants.